sexual health is really one of those indicators of our overall health and what's happening inside our bodies.
Jenn Trepeck has been described as a force of nature in the wellness space. Recognition includes Podcast Magazine's 40 Under 40 and nominations for the 2023 International Women's Podcast Award and 2 Earworthy 2025 award categories as well. Jenn has won Earworthy's 2024 Best Health Podcast and Best Independent Podcast Award and Women's Who Podcast Stellar Interview in 2025. She's an optimal health coach, podcaster, and business consultant. Jenn grew up as the skinny one in the family of dieters, which was awesome until it went away. And so began her weight management saga. Ultimately, though, Jenn learned that nutrition education we're all supposed to know, but nobody taught us.
It makes everything no big deal. Eat what you like, don't eat what you don't like. But it's really protein and fiber at every meal makes sexual desire no big deal. And the truth is, we don't want to live in either extreme. I followed the program, completely changed my life, like the only thing that allowed me to say I'd kick my favorite shoes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode on The Lounge. We are talking today about something that we haven't talked a ton about on this podcast, honestly, and it's an important topic. We're talking about nutrition, we're talking about weight, and we're talking about how these things actually influence your libido. So we're going to talk about what you can do to improve weight management without crazy dieting. We'll ask Jenn her story. I know she has a story here, so I'm going to bring her up in a moment. We'll ask her story about how she got to this world of understanding weight and diet and nutrition so well. So we're going to talk about all of that and more. And as always, relate that back to how does this actually make a difference in your sexual wellness picture, in your libido, in your relationships, and more. So I'm very excited to introduce you to a new friend of mine, Jenn Trepeck. Welcome to the show, Jenn.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to jump in, right away to like a lot of the content I know we're going to give as far as value for the audience. But I know you have a really unique story on your health journey, on growing up and just being like, hey, this is no problem to keep weight off. And then all of a sudden it became a problem. And I know this is a story a lot of people are going to relate to. And so if you would tell us that, and then everybody, we're going to start making some links of like, why does this matter for your sexual health? But if you would first just tell us a little bit about your story and what the saga was for you.
Sure. And I appreciate that you used the word saga because I feel like the word journey doesn't do it justice. It's always drama, right? I came to all this wellness stuff through my own saga of trying to figure out my health and my weight. And as you mentioned, I grew up a dancer and I ate healthful foods, and it wasn't really a thing for me, but it was in my house. So every fad diet under the sun in the 80s and 90s that we all grew up with, I did too. So between high school and college is when I started to gain weight. I stopped dancing 150 hours a week, and, birth control played a factor in that too, and a whole bunch of things, going to college, all of that. And so when I started to gain weight, I was like, okay, I know what to do, right? And I did every diet under the sun, lived on that roller coaster, gained and lost over and over. And I remember by the time I was in my early to mid 20s, I felt like I would just breathe and gain weight, and like something doesn't make sense. I'm doing all the quote unquote right things and still not getting where I want to be. And it's funny, even when I was introduced to the curriculum that I based my practice on, I was like, no, that's okay. I've got my thing. My thing was the crazy roller coaster, but that's what it was. And I saw people who were following this other approach. And one woman in particular was telling her story of removing 150 pounds and keeping it off, mind you. And anything she said after that, I didn't even hear because I was having a conversation with myself in my own head that was like, Jennifer, they know something you don't know. because based on everything you know, that doesn't make any sense. And so I worked with a coach. I followed the program, completely changed my life. Like the only thing that allowed me to say I'd kick my food issues. And from there, I became this insatiable student of trying to understand, like, why isn't this the information that we learned? Because this is fundamentally human. And then how did all the things that we did learn come to be? So I became a health coach on the side of my full-time job in 2007. Now, 18 years later, I work with clients one-on-one in small groups. As you mentioned, my podcast is called Salad with a Side of Fries. And my book, Uncomplicating Wellness, that recently came out in October of 2025, we have a chapter that our sexual health is really one of those indicators of our overall health and what's happening inside our bodies.
Amazing. I love that you included that chapter because I think it's so important. And you know what you're saying around your history of these diet plans. I feel like this is so common, right? I see this also in my own private practice of people that come in and they oftentimes feel like they're doing everything right. They've tried like whatever they read online around like this dietary plan, whether it's paleo, we could name a, bazillion other dietary plans, and they're following it to a T, and it's like not working. Like it's very different when people are eating standard American diet and they're eating fast food out every day, but it's a completely frustrating thing for people when it's like, okay, well, I think I'm choosing all the right things and still what's happening. So I love that you name that because I do think that comes up way more than people realize. And so, let's start relating it a little bit, if you would. Like, what do you
Yeah,
talk about in that chapter of your book around, hey, this relationship of diet, of nutrition, and sexual wellness? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
absolutely. And I think I talk about it as an indicator of what's happening inside because everything in the body is connected. It's just that most of the time we ignore the whispers from the body that we get related to hunger and cravings and all of those other things because people have told us so many things, and we are overwhelmed with information that we follow those rules instead of paying attention to our body. However, when it comes to sexual health and libido, it gets our attention. And that's why I love talking about it as an indicator, because it is inherently connected to blood flow. It is inherently connected to stress management. It is inherently connected to sleep, right? Our hormones, all of these pieces work together. And so our libido is one of those whispers that we hear much clearer than other signs and symptoms from the body. So, we can go down any one of those paths, but even if we think about, for women, lubrication and arousal, and for men, an erection, it is blood flow. If we don't have metabolic health, if we don't have cardiovascular health, that blood flow is impaired. When we are stressed, cortisol gets a bad rap, and there are pieces of cortisol that we really need. But when cortisol is high because we are stressed, what's not high? Our libido. So all of these pieces on a high level, all of these pieces work together. And we often think there's something wrong with us. And more often than not, whether it's the pounds on the scale or what we're seeing in our libido, it's a sign of something else going on in our body communicating with us. And so if we start to work with the biochemistry and recognize that it's biochemical, not a flaw in who you are as a human, we can really make some progress and take the pressure off and relieve some of that stress that, when it's like, okay, take your clothes off, like that's the least of what our body is ready for.
You and I share such a similarity on kind of our approach to this. I love it. Like one of the things that I think is super important for people to realize and to take the stigma out of any sexual health issues is that this is just a flag, right? Sexual health issues are just like a flag, which means like, hey, this is your body just saying, hey, alert, something's out of balance. And we need to take the stigma off of it and just realize this is just the body communicating. And it could communicate a bazillion different ways. And for a lot of people, a way that it does communicate an imbalance is through some sort of sexual health issue. And it doesn't need to be any more than that, right? We need to get the taboo off and just be like, oh, wow, my body's talking. Okay, let's listen. So we totally share that. And let's go into a couple of these that you mentioned. So metabolic health, circulation were, two key ones that you mentioned here that have a very clear direct relationship to sexual health. But let's break those down one at a time, if you would. Can you talk a little bit about metabolic health and its relationship to sex drive and sexual wellness? And can you start, because metabolic health is like a term that I think a lot of people know, but I think there's probably some people that are like, what do we mean by that? So will you start with what we actually mean by that and then kind of help us make those connections?
Absolutely. So metabolic health, by definition, is a handful of functions that connect to how our body uses food and fuel. And that in turn connects to every system in the body. Because if we can't take in fuel and break that down, transport it through the body, get it into cells where it's needed, and use it, there isn't a system in the body that will work. So fundamentally, thinking about metabolic health as that fuel uptake is how I like to think of it, in a way so that we can all, no pun intended, but digest it, right? One of the key factors of metabolic health is blood sugar balance. When we have blood sugar dysregulation or insulin insensitivity, our blood flow is impaired. Our blood can actually end up being very thick, and it doesn't move well. It doesn't transport nutrients well. It doesn't get to all the places that it needs to go. Well, we need that blood flow in our brains and everywhere to feel well, to have desire. We need it in our, sexual organs. Sensitivity, lubrication, arousal are all connected to that blood flow. So if we aren't able to move the blood around, if the blood is thick, essentially, and dense, it's not going to do what it needs to do for anything else. So when we focus on metabolic health, we're really thinking about that blood sugar balance and eating for nutrients. So how do we keep our blood sugar balanced? And by this, I really want to be clear, because a lot of people hear about insulin sensitivity or insensitivity, and they think, well, you just don't want it to be high. You want it to be low. And the truth is, we don't want to live in either extreme. And a lot of people these days have constant glucose monitors. And I work with people all the time where they're like, well, it's still going up and down. And it's like, wait a minute, we want it to go up and down. That means it's responding to what we're eating and what's happening. We just want it to go up and down within a range. And if you don't have a constant glucose monitor, don't worry about it. You don't need to know the exact number to make choices that support our metabolic health, our overall health, and of course, our sexual health. So the phrase I like for everybody is protein and fiber at every meal makes your moving fat no big deal. But it's really protein and fiber at every meal makes sexual desire no big deal, makes everything no big deal. So protein is clean, lean protein. Eat what you like, don't eat what you don't like, but clean, lean protein every time we eat. Fiber is vegetables and sometimes fruit. And then a meal is really every time we eat. The only difference between a meal and a snack is how much we're having at a time, and then therefore how long it's going to last us till we need to fuel again. The other thing that we need a couple times a day is quality fat. So thinking omega-3s, your walnuts, your almonds, avocado, our quality fats. By the way, a serving of avocado is half of the avocado. People are like, what? That's so much. Like, everybody tells me, I had a quart of a serving of a half an avocado. And I'm like, what? Like, just eat the avocado. We need the avocado. We need that quality fat for our hormones. We need that quality fat for our brain, for every piece, for stress, all of these things. So these pieces of nutrition that when we put them in place, a lot of other things start to take care of themselves. So protein, fiber, quality fat throughout the day and every time we eat. And I challenge you to watch and see what happens.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do want to emphasize too, as you're talking about blood flow, just for all of our listeners, that you did mention this a little bit earlier, but there is like that direct link between blood flow and lubrication. So I just wanted to make sure everybody reheard that, because when we're talking about this in blood flow and the importance and the relationship of metabolic health to blood flow, we're really saying, hey, this applies to both women and men. So I think there's just such a taboo out there around like, oh, blood flow is needed for men's sexual health, that the ladies so oftentimes don't realize how important it is for them as well. So
1,000%. And on that front too, what I just talked about are sort of those macronutrients. And especially as we consider blood flow, micronutrients, in particular antioxidants, are incredibly powerful. So part of the fruits and vegetables also is getting those phytonutrients, those micronutrients, the nutrients that we need in smaller quantities, but in particular antioxidants. Astaxanthin is one, not just for, it actually helps with eye health too, and endurance, but cardiovascular health and blood flow is amazing. There's a doctor in New York City who wrote a book called The Hardness Factor. And in that book, he talks, Dr. Stephen Lamb, for those of you who know him, he talked a lot about OPCs, or oligomeric proanthocyanins, that are really powerful antioxidants that support blood flow. And the other interesting thing is for people who have higher levels of cholesterol, OPCs in particular can make the platelets more slippery, which supports blood flow and prevents, or that's a strong word, right? But can help those platelets not stick to each other or those arterial walls, so that they are more slippery and can get through. And we see dramatic difference for men and women with blood flow and antioxidants.
So that brings me to my next question then, is like, at what point with your practice are you emphasizing supplements versus saying, okay, well, let's get these things from food? Like, what's your advice for people on, oh, we want to improve cholesterol, we want to improve blood flow, we want our platelets to be less sticky, all these things.
Yeah.
What are you saying? Hey, let's get supplements on board. I have to take a break from what we were just talking about, because I'm so excited to introduce you to a couple of my favorite toys on the market. Because one of the things I really, really am passionate about when it comes to sexual health, pleasure, passion, is not only those things, because those are very important, but it's also helping you find ways to deeply heal. And this is why I love the company Mystery Vibe so much, because their products I've seen to do just that. So I'm going to tell you about a couple of these. I have a product for women and a product for men here. So this is the female product. This is called the Crescendo 2. You will have links in the show notes. You will also get discounts on this. If you use the code Libido20, you will get discounts on this product. And what's so cool about this product from a pleasure standpoint, and then we're going to talk about a health standpoint, but from a pleasure standpoint, look what I can do with this product. It is so bendable. So it has all of these hinges where you can bend it in all of these different ways. And what that's allowing you to do is be very specific around which part of the interior of the vagina, G-spot, etc., that you are going to access and stimulate. Now, what internal studies have shown on this particular product is that it increases arousal about 73% and lubrication up to 93%. So that's where I'm talking about, hey, we can get all of this uniqueness of pleasure. We can pinpoint those spots. We can wake up our vagina in ways that maybe other vibrators can't, because you can't get the level of maneuverability and flexibility that you can with this toy. And all of that, and then you can also see in many people an increase in arousal and lubrication for that deep healing component. Also, another product that Mystery Vibe has for women that also has been shown to improve arousal as well as lubrication. It's called a Libido. I will also put a link in the show notes about that. It's a cock ring that vibrates the entire vulva. It's phenomenal. So also look for that. Again, the code you're looking for is Libido 20 for that discount. And now for all the gentlemen watching. So this is the Tenuto 2. So this toy is amazing because it has been researched to improve erections by double. So erections get better, performance gets better, and it can help with prostate health. So it's a super easy toy to use. It looks a little bit strange when you're looking at it, but all you're gonna do is you're gonna just do penile insertion right here. This back part will sit back on the perineum, and voila, there you go. So again, Libido 20 for this. If you guys want better erections, if you want to be harder longer, if you want to please your partner longer, and women, if you want to have a better arousal, better lubrication, and wake up those parts of your vagina so that not only are you experiencing more pleasure, more passion, better orgasms in many cases, but you are also deeply healing yourself as well. So again, those will be in the show notes. I hope you take advantage of these discounts and the coupon codes there. Libido 20 is your coupon code. I will see you all in a moment as we get back to our show.
Quick word from our sponsors before we continue with the episode.
Ladies, midlife isn't a crisis. It's a power move. On the Mature Allure podcast, we're flipping the script on aging, beauty, wellness, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sherry O, here to keep it real, fun, and fearless. Ready to embrace every chapter? Hit play on Mature Allure wherever you listen to podcasts.
Midlife your way, that's Mature Allure.
Great question. And it's different for every person. But fundamentally, we cannot supplement our way out of poor lifestyle choices, out of poor nutrition. Supplements are designed to supplement. By definition, they add to. So we want to fundamentally, first and foremost, get those nutrients through our nutrition choices. Now, with that said, we all live in the real world. And the reality is also that our food supply is just not what it once was. The other piece of the equation is that most of the time, by the time somebody's coming to have this conversation, they don't have a fire in their toaster, they have a house fire. And by the way, even if it was a fire in the toaster and you poured a thimble of water on it, you would say, water doesn't put out fires, right? But if we have a fire hose, the water becomes really powerful. So sometimes the supplements can play that role to help us put out the house fire that's currently going on. And then on an ongoing basis, we may not need that. But I do say to people too, if we aren't willing to make those nutrition choices, if we aren't willing to make those lifestyle adjustments, then we might need a greater commitment to the supplementation in an effort to balance. But we will never out-supplement what we do in our daily lives.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to we will never out-exercise what we put in our mouth, right?
Exactly.
Very similar analogy as that. So let's talk about hormones now, because that's another, when we're talking about root causes of libido issues from a physical perspective. Obviously, everybody, or most people, I think, are aware of hormones being a big factor. So from a standpoint of nutrition, can you help us make some of these links as far as what you see from nutrition and food choices and hormonal balance?
Yeah, so most people, there's so many pieces. I'm trying to think about where to start. So my brain started, we had mentioned before, quality fats, right? We need these quality fats in order to make our hormones. Our endocrine system requires this. And so the other piece of a lot of people are way out of range in the balance between omega-6s to omega-3s. And that that imbalance snowballs into other dysregulation with our fat. So we really want to focus on adding more omega-3s to bring that back into balance so our body can do what it's supposed to do. One of the things it's supposed to do is produce these hormones. Now, here's the other thing, because this really ties into stress in a couple different ways, right? So cortisol, the stress hormone, when cortisol is high, in particular, our sexual hormones are not high because cortisol, that stress response, like think back, caveman era, saber-toothed tiger, we are being chased. Cortisol is designed to save our lives. It is fight or flight, right? That response is designed to be 20 minutes, like start to finish, give or take 15, 20 minutes. So we see the saber-toothed tiger, we run from it, we find a place to hide, we watch the tiger pass, our body calms down. When cortisol is high, when we're in fight or flight, any body system that is not critical to survival of the next 20 minutes turns off because none of those things matter if we're not alive in 20 minutes. So that includes not just our immune system, not just growing hair and nails, not just your digestive system and metabolism, but your reproductive system. Because making babies doesn't matter if we're not alive in 20 minutes. And so I think we underestimate the role that stress plays biochemically, not just in terms of the mood and saying, oh, this is what I feel like doing right now. There's really so much involved in the body. If we're never able to turn off that stress response, trying to feel in the mood for anything sexual is potentially going to feel like someone asking you to climb Mount Everest naked and barefoot. And you're like, how? It's not possible.
Yeah. I was out to lunch with a couple friends yesterday, both of who are having digestive issues, and one of them who is also having blood sugar issues. And I was going through some possible root causes with them to explore. And one of the things I was telling them is, this is going to sound really cliche. That's what I was saying to them. But honestly, we got to talk about stress because it's exactly like it is a cliche thing to say. And I just want to name that here because I know people hear it over and over and over again as stress impacting you, stress is impacting you, stress is impacting you. But I think sometimes we hear that so much and it's like, yeah. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just stressed. But I think it's like just essential for people to understand, like, no, there's actually these chemical processes like what you're describing here that are actually impacting us on a cellular level, on a hormonal level, on a weight level, and all these different things. So you're hearing it, people I think are hearing it so much because it's just like the elephant in the room around, like you could fix a bazillion other things, but if you're not fixing the stress, it's, we might not get where we need to go.
And the other thing that I think is so complicated about it is our perception of stress intellectually and emotionally compared to the body's perception of stress.
Yes.
So like, you remember the old posters about like it had some quote on it about success and there was the picture of the iceberg and the water line.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
I think our perception of stress is that water line. The actual stress is the iceberg. So we think that we're not so bad because our perception is just the tip of the iceberg over the water line.
Yeah.
And the reality is that our body's perception of stress is that entire iceberg. So including in every single day, things that chip away at that iceberg. Even when we don't feel like we're stressed, we need to do these things to help continue to send signals to the body that it is safe, that it is okay, that all of these other systems can come back online. And it's a continuous thing because our bodies don't know the difference between the email, the uncomfortable conversation, our phone buzzing and not, for anything, and that saber-toothed tiger that's threatening our lives.
So then let's talk about a little bit about what we can do about it. So obviously balance blood sugar, right? And do some of the things you're talking about, your protein, your lean fiber, your couple fats a day. But what else are you recommending for people as far as stress? I mean, I do think there's like a huge point of it that you're right. It's like there is this awareness of, hey, this is actually impacting your body probably dramatically more than a lot of people realize. So that might be the first step, is just like acceptance and awareness of it. But beyond that, beyond some of those things that you already suggested from a dietary perspective, what else are you recommending people to work with this?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about movement, right? Now, movement helps with blood flow and our cardiovascular health and that stress response. So think about when we are in that stress response, that saber-toothed tiger is coming. Fight or flight requires us to use that energy. So movement and activity can help us use that energy that the body is perceiving as that fight or flight. Another interesting thing is even our breathing. So think about what happens. So we're running, we hide, we watch the saber-toothed tiger pass, and then what would happen? If we just imagine the scenario, maybe you're watching a movie, right? And somebody's hiding from the bad guy, whatever. The bad guy passes, and then what happens? Your breathing gets deeper. The breaths get longer. So if we can remind ourselves, set an alarm a couple times a day, whether it's what we've heard of as box breathing or just a couple longer, deeper breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth, breathing from the diaphragm, so lower down in the body versus breathing from the chest. So to do this breathing, instead of, as you inhale, thinking of the chest coming up or down, think of the ribs expanding and contracting like an accordion. And that helps us get the breath into the diaphragm. It's a physiological signal to the body that the stressor has passed. Great way to add it in. Do it before a meal, right? What better time to turn on rest and digest than before we eat? But it's also that idea of habit stacking where we can attach it to something that's hopefully already happening throughout the day, right? So it just gives us a reminder, like, pause, take a deep breath, slow down the breath to send some of these signals to the body. Connection with your partner, connection with friends, having those conversations. Like, there's actually a lot of recent research about how having that vent session with your best friend is a de-stressor. Do it. If you have that voice that's like, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, you're not. Say the things out loud. Get it out there. If you're not one to say it out loud, then figure out a journal or type the note on your phone that you maybe delete later or whatever it is. But getting all of that stuff out of the body is incredibly powerful. I took Pilates years ago from a woman who's an original student of Joseph Pilates. I don't know if this is true, but she's like older than God, and so I think it's true. She said the phrase working out originally came from the idea that you were working the stress out of the body. So if you need a walk here and there, instead of that 1 hour intense session, do it. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, stand up and sit down 10 times. All of that is so incredibly powerful. And I think it's underappreciated because we hear so much about how if it's not intense enough, if it's not long enough, it's not sweaty enough, or all of these things, that it doesn't count. And so I encourage everybody to do the little things throughout the day that seem like nothing, because they add up to something really powerful.
Yeah, tiny habits are the ways to go. They're totally the ones that last for sure. What else have we not said today that you think is really important in this conversation of nutrition, of wellness, of food, of sexual health?
Yeah, I think, and this connects to everything, but we haven't talked about sleep. And, humans are the only species that deprive themselves of sleep for no good reason. Like, fundamentally, we are also animals, And it's interesting because similar to stress, what we think of or what we tend to experience on a daily basis as sleep versus what our body experiences as quality sleep are often dramatically different. So deep sleep that frankly can only happen from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. is required for detoxification, is required for healthful aging, is required, period. So it means if we're going to bed at midnight, 1 o'clock, our max amount of deep sleep is limited. And I say this with all of the compassion and love in the world because I am with you. Sleep, we are all a work in progress, right? Sleep is one that I work on all the time too. And all of those pieces are connected, right? Without quality sleep, we don't have that hormone reset. Our libido drops. We cannot make enough testosterone and estrogen and progesterone, and all the balance of the hormones essentially gets scrambled when we aren't getting quality sleep and enough of that quality sleep, right? Our energy tanks, our mood drops, our libido follows. And when we think about all of those things too, like even the glass of wine that we think is really helping us sort of unwind and relax really impairs that sleep. So we just want to make some choices again so that most of the time we're getting great quality sleep. And that also helps us make better choices throughout the day because in addition to the detoxification, in addition to the hormones, in addition to everything else that happens when we sleep, if we don't sleep well or enough, we are less sensitive to the hormones that tell us when we're done eating. And so it snowballs back into where we started with the quality nutrition choices. It will be infinitely more difficult to make those quality choices about anything and everything without that sleep. And it's all this biochemical soup that's happening in the body. It's not your fault. You're not broken. And in fact, what you're experiencing is the body doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's such an important thing for people to hear because I think so much we are judging sleep by hours and be like, okay, well, I got 6-7 hours. It's got to be good enough. And it's not. And it's not just the amount, it's the quality. I see you have your Aura ring on just like me around like, okay, tracking every day. Like, what is sleep like? What did I do to change it? Like, it's a really, really useful tool to be monitoring this and just be like, okay, are my decisions keeping me on track for a really deep and good night of sleep? Or are they not? And and I think these tracking devices are just so helpful for letting us know, like, did I eat too late? Did I not eat enough for dinner? Did I have more fat at dinner? Did I have more protein at dinner? Like, how are these changes actually impacting sleep positively or negatively? So,
Yeah, I
such a
like
cool tool.
looking at the data. The thing that I say to everybody too is let it be one of the data points so that we're not outsourcing. Like if you wake up feeling energized, go with that. Be careful that we don't let the ring or your watch or whatever tell you or pop your balloon and take the wind out of your sails and say, oh, well, I thought I, felt amazing, but now I feel gross because my watch told me that I should be feeling gross.
Yeah, it's a really important point too. Well, tell us a little bit about how we get a hold of you. I know you have a free gift for everybody, so I want to make sure everybody knows about that free gift. Give us all those goodies, please.
Absolutely. So all social media, I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JennTrepeck. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Wherever you're listening now, Salad with a Side of Fries podcast is there. We love hearing from you, so send a message on your favorite platform. And my book, Uncomplicating Wellness, is available everywhere books are sold, Amazon, all the places, and my website as well. And then the free gift for everybody is a guide called It's Not What to Eat, It's How to Eat. Because as we talked about today, we talked a lot about the what, right? But truthfully, you already know a lot of that. Nobody needs to tell you to eat a cucumber over a Twix. The question is, how do we make the cucumber the desirable choice? And then how do we eat the Twix so that it doesn't impact us the same way that it might right now? So all of that is
everybody's
guide. Yeah.
Yes, making people like want the cucumber over the Twix is a very, very good good angle for this. I think it's just so important. So thank you for that. And we'll have links, you guys, on everything she mentioned, book, website, podcast, and this free giveaway as well.
Yeah.
All of that will be below the video. Also, wherever you're watching it, it'll be just below the video on the platform. And thank you all for listening. Thank you, Jenn, for being here. I really appreciate everybody's attention today. Remember that nutrition really is one of the most critical foundations, as well as sleep, as well as water, as well as hormonal balance. But we're talking about some of these critical foundational pieces for sex, for libido, for wellness on all fronts. And we can do so many lab tests and so many things to find out other root causes, which are many times essential. But if we don't have the foundations, nothing's going to work. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Jenn. And I'll see you all real soon on another episode of The Lounge. Ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the Libido Lounge. Please don't keep me a secret. Please share this with your friends. You can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, as well as how to work with me at mylibidodoc.com.